Well, shaking folks, back with another reaction, back with some more J-drama score, and we're back for a tune from the My Boss, My Hero soundtrack by Takami Yu. Once again, shout out to Michaela and to Kim, no doubt at some point. Shout out to Dawn, who I know at least watched the first episode. I'm very happy that there's people who are going to go on some of these J-drama watch-alongs with me. It's an interest I've had a long time, so the fact that now I get to talk to at least a handful of people about these shows, it is a very cool thing. And we're going to listen to a sadder tune this time, and it's one that's called Heavy Moon. I didn't remember what it was called before I started doing this watch along and, sort of took out the soundtrack and started re-engaging with it. But this is definitely a notable tune in the soundtrack. It's used in a handful of places over the course of the episodes, but it's used in a notable place in episode 1. And given that it's very early in episode 1, and I don't think it's a particular spoiler, I'll mention that it occurs during a scene when Makio, the main character, who again has to go back to high school to prove that he's smart enough to take over the family business, which just happens to be like a Yakuza organization, meaning like organized crime. He's been back at school. I think it's like the first week. I don't think it's the first day, but I think it's the first week, and he's not too bright, and he doesn't know how to write or read a lot of kanji, and so he's never getting things right when he's called on in class, and some students are already sort of laughing, and behind his back and sort of teasing or making jokes about him. And then a student reaches out and is like, oh, don't worry about it. Some of these characters are kind of hard, and he's, trying to project strength, and he's sort of like, oh, I'm not worried about it, it's fine. And then that kid and his friends are like, he said he's not even worried, and they're all sort of laughing at him. And he's hearing all this, and the teacher's not really doing much to stop it, and he just gets fed up. Because again, this is a guy who, he's in the heir to a Yakuza organization, people do what he says, and he's like a really good fighter, so he's always been one of the toughest guys in the organization. And now he's in this setting where like these high school kids are laughing at him and making fun of him because, he can't do stuff that should be pretty basic for a 17-year-old kid, which he's pretending to be. And so he just has enough, and he just gets up and kind of storms out of the class, and he's shouting in the hallway, sort of to himself, but also to his classmates and anyone else who cares to listen. And they're like, yeah, I'm stupid. I know I'm stupid. I know I can't read kanji. Do you have a problem with that? And he sort of like, walks down the hallway like kicking things or whatever. And it's the first moment, I think, in the show when it's like, oh, it's not just going to be a comedy. Like, yeah, there's clearly a lot of comedy going on here, but obviously it's going to be a bit more mixed in terms of the tone. So I like when, and this tune plays, at like the first maybe minute and a half of it. It's like a 4-minute tune, so I don't think it's the whole track. But I do remember when I first watched it, and certainly when I rewatched it now, like a week or two ago, once I began doing the watch along, that the tune fits the scene really well. So let's hear it. This is a tune called Heavy Moon by Takami Yu from the soundtrack to My Boss, My Hero 2006. beautiful piece, and one that again hits the moment right, and not just the scene I described, but a handful of others as well. I love the way the piano, the violin, the cello, I believe a flute, I like the way they all blend. Kim pointed out that in the piano version of Sorafune, the final section had a music box sort of feel, and this one, sort of went around twice, and the ending, and it was also sort of the middle, and then when it reset. But yeah, that it went back to a very stripped down singular piano, and in those moments it kind of had that same feeling where it was a fuller tune that then reduced to like the most fragile and delicate incarnation of it, which had that kind of music box feel, even if it was a piano in this case. So I enjoyed that aspect of production or composition, and it feels like that may have been a deliberate motif in a couple of the pieces. So shout out to Takami. I've really enjoyed the soundtrack as I've connected with the show, which again, it's like crazy nostalgic. It's not quite 20 years, but it's close to it. So it just occurs to me, I've been watching J-drama a long time. I do have one whole like DVD bookshelf. It's just J-drama. And so, ultimately the experience of going back, having seen not all of those, probably like 35 to 40% of my collection I haven't actually watched. So perhaps at some point we'll go through one that will be fresh to me as well. But the point is, having seen a number of them over 18 years, to now go back and see the very first one, it's been really cool. I did want to point out on the soundtrack CD, the thing that is speaking and saying, hey, this is the My Boss, My Hero soundtrack. Can you see what it is? Can you see what it is? It's a little pudding, which if you know the show, if you've been watching, or if you decide to watch it at some point, you have seen or will see that pudding plays a amusingly and comedically notable role in the show. So yeah, ultimately a cool tune here, a sadder one definitely, and one that fits the scene I described perfectly, and as I said, lets you know, this show is going to be a bit more complicated. It's not just a light and zany sort of comedy. So shout out once again to the show in general. Shout out to Nagase Tomoya. I'm looking forward to going through more of his shows, and he does this kind of comedic acting in some other shows, but he also can play things much more straight. And even in those roles though, there's moments where he's just funny, just the way he says things is very funny. So looking forward to that. Let me know what you think of this, and I will see you next time. Peace.